Hey everyone, this is Elan. I'm back today with John Snedden. He's a retired law enforcement officer, and he's here with us today. I'm going to let him introduce himself and give his background.
Um, how you doing? This is John Snedden. I'm a retired federal law enforcement officer. My grandfather and my father were in the law enforcement profession, both for a long time. I had occasion to see them as human beings and as law enforcement officers. And it really kind of ingrained into me what kind of person picks law enforcement as a profession. And the next thing you know, I'm pursuing it myself. My introduction to my operational aspect of law enforcement was unique in the sense that it was a circumstance where I was assigned to a country that was under martial law. I was assigned to that country's federal law enforcement office, where I had a partner that was their equal in their federal system, and we acted together. He covering the foreign nationals, and myself covering the U.S. Citizens. And particularly under martial law, there were a lot of major problems, anywhere from insurgency of the Communist Party there, all the way to U.S. citizens thinking that they can get away with anything because they're in a foreign country. So, but we complemented each other very well. We're able to work through any problems we developed, and obviously it becomes a brotherhood.
Yeah,
right off the bat with your partner, and then I became a Naval Criminal Investigative Service special agent, and I started out in Philadelphia, and I really wanted to kind of talk about the situation that Philadelphia finds itself in now, because it's mirroring what you see in Portland to some degree. Mm-hmm. And it gets worse every day. The law enforcement on the street, they encounter incredible things. I mean, you just never know what you're going to find when you get out there, and you have very few seconds to think. But now, and you're attacking the problem in your arena on the street. You don't expect, you do expect other people to have in your chain of command and in the prosecutor's office to have your back. And that is exactly what's not happening now.
Yeah, it's scary.
Not only are you being attacked on the street, but when you get back off your shift and crawl out of your vehicle, you're faced with a bigger problem, which is, nobody has your back there, primarily because of the fact, and specifically in Philadelphia, as a result of George Soros' efforts to install his district attorneys in various sites in the United States, Philadelphia, San Francisco, there's several of them. But the most extreme case is in Philadelphia with a defense attorney masquerading as district attorney, and his name is Larry Krasner. He has essentially attacked the police. He doesn't want to see anybody in jail. I mean, the statistics alone are shocking. Just as an example, in 2019, there were 236 felony gun arrests in Philadelphia. You know how many were found guilty?
How many?
One.
Yeah.
One out of all that. I mean, it's shocking. He has ADAs assistant district attorneys working for him that have been contributing to the bail fund for people that the police, arrest. I mean, if that's not a conflict of interest, I have no idea what is.
John, do you mind me asking you if you feel like this is, because I understand this is obviously a big problem in Philadelphia. Do you feel like the in terms of the atmosphere and kind of the treatment of police, like we saw it with the shooting of where Rolf, I believe is his last name, Officer Rolf,
Yes.
shot the man who was, they said, initially was sleeping in his car, got up, resisted arrest, stole the taser shot. And without even completing the investigation, they already pressed charges for felony murder, which no one actually believes is going to stick, anyone who understands the law. This seems to be a consistent problem, not only in Philadelphia. I mean, in terms of the treatment of police, the immediate jump to condemn police and even letting criminals free in California seems to be a new common trend. Do you see this as a statewide, a nationwide issue, or do you see it as
absolutely. I think that, Larry Krasner's district attorney's office in Philadelphia is just an example of what's going on all over the place. I mean, there's been an epidemic of recently of people, rushing to judgment, where most people would sit back and take a breath and say, hey, what exactly are we looking at? As opposed to that, they knee-jerk react to whatever, is going to politically, move the ball forward for them.
Yes, politicians.
And I think, GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, came out and said, we were not consulted before the district attorney came out with that, with his pronouncements.
Yeah.
And exactly that is exactly happening. I mean, they want to, obviously, their tunnel vision, those prosecutors, their tunnel vision is their political livelihood.
Yeah.
Whereas, they're not looking at the officers. I mean, that's
well, never mind the officers. I don't even think they're looking at what's going to cause, a better police force, what's going to create a better situation for communities. They're looking at it entirely from a political standpoint of what will reflect better on them at this exact moment in terms of their belief of what is politically needed, not in terms of what is needed for society. Right? I mean, they're just saying, okay, will this help my political career if I just press this? Will I believe that this is going to help me? Yes. So let me press it. Let me bypass due process. Let me put this out. Let me get a charge on him for felony murder. In the end of the day, I don't see how it could possibly reflect positively all these things you're talking about, because in the end of the day, if there's more criminals on the street, if police are condemned for actions that they shouldn't be condemned for necessarily, if there's no due process and police are inevitably going to get off for these charges, right? Rolf will inevitably get off for felony murder. It's absurd. It's going to cause more chaos than good. I believe there has to be some kind of reasoning behind those. We were touching earlier. You said you worked in a country that had martial law. You've seen things firsthand.
Yes.
You're a communist country. I didn't know any of this. I mean, do you see similarities between the actions we have in our country right now slowly leading into what you do in those countries?
Absolutely. I mean, when you have on the street, you've got foreign nationals and you have U.S. citizens, and they know what kind of justice system they're going to be dealing with. If they're in their right mind, they want to make sure that the U.S. handles them before the foreign entities do, because clearly I've seen circumstances where foreign nationals in that country under martial law were hauled off and never seen again, or they're hauled in there with no charges.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've done drug suppression operations in Thailand, and I have great respect for the Thai National Police. I mean, those guys are tough mothers, you know what I'm saying? But they have a different kind of justice. And, when you're outside the country, when you're outside the country and you're looking at the U.S. from the outside. It's a giant bright light.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have to be able to, you thank God every day that you're a U.S. citizen.
Yep.
Because, you know, just as in my time in Thailand with the drug ops, I mean, you know, once we got them, you know, they were going to tell everything whether they liked it or not. So, you know, there was awesome law enforcement there, but they have a different set of rules that we don't have. But again, I can tell you, anybody that has not been outside the U.S. and has not looked back, let me tell you, it's a big eye opener, and you can't wait to get back in some regards. It's particularly the justice system that we know of.
And just our basic, I mean, most other countries don't have the same kind of constitutional rights we have. They're just not protected. We're unique in that sense. And anyone who's come from a different country, you know, who may have come from an oppressive country, like my family came from 2 oppressive countries. We're raised, hopefully, to understand the difference. I know my mother, when she escaped Iraq, and I have American citizenship. My father's family was killed off for their ethnic identity as Jew in Eastern Europe. They have instilled in me the understanding that the freedoms you have here are very, very important, very valuable, and you have to preserve them. I feel like now there's almost an attack on those fundamental ideals and those fundamental principles that make this country safe, great, and offer freedom and all these things. There's almost like a breakdown of our history, of our traditional kind of, not traditional values in the sense of like, you have to be this way, but in the sense of everything that's gotten us to this point where we've improved and we've progressed and we've been a bastion of hope and light compared to many other countries. Do you know why that's happening? Do you have an idea of, like, I look at what's going on, I say, how could this percentage of the population really believe these things? I don't understand it.
Well, I thought, like you said before, it's, you know, you've got a lot of complacency going on.
Yep.
People, you know, they don't, I'll tell you what really burns me about that kind of thing. People know they need a law enforcement entity to keep them safe. There's nobody else they're going to call. Social workers are not going to get it. I mean, you must have that. And it galls me that you've got, you know, you have people that are having Blue Lives Matter parades all over, you know, quite a few places, particularly in Florida.
Yeah.
And they had one today in Minnesota, but it was overrun. The one in Minnesota was overrun today by the BLM. So, but I think that's catching on. The big problem is you've got individuals in political positions that, you know, are beholden to other people. And, you know, their focus is only on their political future. I mean, you see what's happening in New York City. I mean, can you imagine how many, you know, they have like a 600% increase in shootings.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
it's not.
Yeah. I mean, yesterday there was a guy walking down in broad daylight, a guy walking down the street with a grenade launcher.
In all your history of doing this, you know, I'm imagining you were in law enforcement for quite some time, and you actually were in areas of law enforcement that are especially difficult, even beyond the standard, which is already very difficult. I mean, you were sent to a country where there was martial law. You know, you did things you've for sure seen things that were very, very extreme. You've been international with this. You have a global perspective on law enforcement and how things should be run and why things are run the way they are, and a very good understanding of kind of political motivations behind things. Do you feel as though there isn't, and you can be totally honest here, do you feel as though there's an intentional breakdown of law enforcement for a purpose? Do you feel as though this is just kind of escalating strictly because politicians may believe, well, this is my best bet, like we said earlier, or do you think there's something more insidious behind it?
No, I think because of the, you know, if it was 1 or 2 DAs, you know, that'd be one thing, or maybe 5, but it's across the country. So I think it's something more significant than just them doing that.
I'm surprised that our politicians are also being so complacent in it, which makes me even more worried that there's something a little bit more in cities going on, and the kind of the social pressure that they're imposing on people to ruin people's lives, to defund not only the police but people, bankrupt people who disagree with them.
Yeah, I think that they're trying. What they're doing in the cities that we've seen this, it mirrors what you'll see in other major cities under martial law, where they become the be all and end all. I mean, it's amazing in a country with martial law what kind of power the mayor has. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, he might as well be the president. It's absolutely shocking. And I think that we've gotten to this point where, particularly in New York City, and a lot of these other cities, but just as an example, like in Philadelphia, you have Larry Krasner as a district attorney that runs, he's all about the criminals, bottom line. And then you have Jim Kenney, who is the mayor, who does the same thing. And then what do? They bring in a police commissioner from where? From Portland.
Oh, of course, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, Danielle Outlaw is from Portland. She did a really good job where she was there.
Are you talking? Sorry, are you talking with officers now and getting their sense of morale and their sense of where they're at? Do you feel like something's gone? Has it gone very downhill in your experience?
Oh my God, I've been a member of the Fraternal Order of Police since I've been in law enforcement. And just the information that you get from the FOP is shocking. I mean, it's very rare or hardly ever that you would see your FOP presidents come out and, say blatantly, hey, nobody has your back. And they've said that. And it's true now. They'd rather go after the guys on the street, the cops on the street, than they would the people that are attacking the police. Just an example. I mean, you have a situation where tear gas is used where the prosecutors or the protesters are physically attacking the officers, and the officers then use tear gas to get them to back off.
Yep.
Well, you have mayors and DAs that are charging the officers with the use of tear gas after they've been attacked.
Yeah.
Well, what is that?
No, they're handicapping the police. They're putting them in a position where they can't respond. There was this was shocking to me. There was a report, I think it was in Florida, I'm not 100% sure, where officers were called in for a shooting. And 2 officers showed up, and it was a false shooting. There was no shooting, and it was just a setup. And they all surrounded the officers and started throwing glass bottles at them and attacking them. You have reporters who try and cover this, who are being attacked and being told you can't cover what we're doing. So people like to pretend that there's no insidious element here or no dangerous element to this, that everyone is peaceful, that there's no negative response. But if you just look at the facts, there is a very dangerous component to this. It doesn't mean that all the protesters are dangerous. Most, I would say, I agree that the majority are peaceful and just want to go out and protest.
Right.
And ignore what's happening. Like you said, if tear gas has to be used, you cannot. Inevitably, you are putting the police in a position to not be able to respond safely.
Right.
And which means inevitably they will stop responding, which we're seeing, which is why we see 600% increases in violent crime or shootings in New York, which is why we see in California criminals are out on the street, which is, we're creating an atmosphere that has no accountability for the criminal and full accountability for the police officer. If
you bring it down to brass tacks, let's say you respond to a domestic violence circumstance. It's been in my experience, everybody's got a hothead. Okay. And particularly in New York now with bail reform, somebody's got a hothead. When you take them in and they have to sit there for a while, they lose that hothead a little bit and they gain perspective. Which I think helps them be able to mentally manage what happened and, decompress from that. But now they're letting him out immediately.
Yes.
Immediately with a hothead. So you've got a guy that you just hooked up to get out of a domestic violence situation. And the next thing you know, he's back on the street. And, he's still got his hothead. A lot of these guys, and I don't know what the percentage is, but I do know in New York it's happened a lot, where you have a domestic violence issue. You apprehend the guy. You take him into court. The judge has to release him based on the new Bail Reform Act. And he goes back and he kills the person.
It just happened.
Yeah.
It just happened. There was this guy, this story yesterday of this guy who was with someone who stabbed two people at a protest, one in the neck and one in the leg. This guy was arrested with him. I don't think he's the one who did the stabbing. I don't know why he was arrested exactly. I didn't read the article fully. What I got to the bottom of it was that, or they didn't say it in the article. I actually did read the article. When I got to the bottom of the article, they said that this guy was released from prison, and the first thing he did was went up to a car that had a girl in it eating ice cream, shot her in the head and took the car, murdered the girl, and drove off.
Right. I mean, there is no, at this juncture, there is no adverse impact on the individual other than arresting him, taking him to court where they immediately release him.
So they don't care anymore, the criminals.
No. I mean, my God, there's a case where a guy had 27 burglaries removed from that weren't prosecuted in his case by a DA that is of the George Soros ilk, and the same thing applies to I know officers that stopped a car. The operator was a 2-time murderer. He had weapons in his trunk, which obviously he's not supposed to have. And they took him in, and the DA released him.
Yeah, I'm sure it's happening a lot more than we even know about. There was this guy who made a video that went very viral, and he's talking about how, if you look, like, the politicians are working with BLM, right? Even BLM goes to Act Blue, the money that goes in, or whatever it's called, that organization that essentially funds the Democratic Party.
Right.
And this guy kind of showed a pyramid of how Soros and like certain other people are behind it, and they're funding the BLM and the politicians to get, so it's all. And then you look at Amazon, who's made a lot of money during this. You look at all these online businesses that have made a ton of money, and that he believes that this is all some kind of conspiracy. He's an African-American man. He has no, you know what I mean? The whole kind of identity politics argument with him doesn't work. He's coming out and saying, listen, I grew up in a tough neighborhood, but I'm able to look at this and say, I think there's something else going on here. Look, I don't know if any of that's true personally. I saw his video. I was like, okay, I have no idea. You brought up Soros now also. I've heard this twice in the past few days. So I'm like, okay, what's going on?
Well, look at who's funding these guys to begin with. I mean, they're definitely the district attorneys that I'm talking about. The defense attorneys that are masquerading as district attorneys are getting most of their money, if not all of it, from Soros. Other candidates can't compete with them. The guy is, George Soros is responsible for the financial downfall of England, as far as I know. I mean, he made a huge dent in their financial markets. And, I just read an article where he targets various companies to buy them out. I mean, he has a very sophisticated way in which he can manipulate financial markets. You don't think that he has a way of using that sophistication to manipulate our political system? Absolutely. I think that it's I just don't know. Like, when I hear this, I'll be honest, my brain goes to like, why? What's his intention? What's his goal? I mean, he's so rich already. He's powerful already. He's connected with every politician already. What's his goal? I mean, this does not end well for anyone. If there's no police, there's a breakdown of society. Like we talked about before we started recording.
one of the leaders of BLM openly coming out that they're a Marxist. I'm seeing on their website they're trying to essentially break down the two-parent household, the traditional two-parent house. There's we're destroying statues that have nothing to do with slavery, just history in general. We're erasing history at this point. I mean, I'm looking at what's going on, and you're not the first person to bring up Soros to me. I'm, to be totally honest, somewhat uneducated on this whole aspect of stuff. And I hear his name come up, and I go, why would this one singular man, what's his goal? I mean, what is the point of all this is pretty much what I'm getting at.
Anarchy. I mean, I don't know what his total end game is, but he seems to revel in any kind of anarchy. I mean, look at Europe.
Yeah.
You know, he enjoys that. I mean, you don't see him out, oh, this is horrible. But
you don't think there's other people perhaps involved, or like that there's something else going on, or that there might be, because this other guy in his video said that like these online companies that are the richest companies in the world are also benefiting from this. And if you look,
right,
like he wouldn't be working with these companies to be pushing this kind of chaos. Like you said, keeping us locked up. We have to shop online. We have to do all this stuff online. Small businesses get destroyed. More government dependence. Universal basic income is what I keep hearing being pushed right now. Since this started, I keep hearing my friends come up and say, well, we need universal basic income. Here's proof. I do see that there's agendas that don't make sense to me. And I'm like, well, is it all coming from this higher up group that is trying to impose this on society to create more government dependence, universal basic income?
Well, I think it's, you know, I wouldn't, you know, single out just one person, but I certainly think there's other people that fall in line with his interests that, you know, are a party to the whole thing. I mean, you cannot, when you look at what happens with BLM and what happens with Antifa, what essentially, you know, BLM isn't what I think it was intended to be. It's been hijacked clearly by Antifa, but you know, the communications that they have and the way they go about things, they have training. I mean, it's almost like, you know, if you look at any communist element in a foreign country, just like Abu Sayyaf. I mean, you know, they're organized. I mean, they're funded. You know, it's not like some guy just woke up in the morning and said, hey, no, you know, I'd like to have anarchy. You know, they are really organized. They have meetings. You know, if you look into it further, you realize that you're not dealing with just a bunch of guys that, you know, want to run around and break things. No.
I mean, there was right a few blocks away from my house, there were people laying out, I don't know who, perfectly encased things of bricks during the protest, laying them out all in every block. There was like 3 of these containers of bricks laid out during the day, and that they were locked up for at night to be opened up and thrown at stores. For a fact, yeah. I saw this, maybe it's anecdotal, but I personally witnessed this. I saw it. There's other situations where I saw videos of people doing the same thing and being like, why are there bricks laid out here? There obviously is an organized element behind this, trying, like you said, to hijack and take advantage, which is a shame because I believe the actual concept of Black Lives Matter, of bringing attention to racism, bringing attention to issues that may exist with the police force, all these things are necessary that are now off the table. It's no longer really.
Oh yeah, it's well beyond that. I mean, I don't, you know, I have never, during the course of my law enforcement experience, you know, the guys that I have worked with want to be there. They want to help people. I mean, that's, you know, that's the driving force. You have a calling to do that. You know, it's not, you know, do you enjoy an investigation where you arrest a bunch of people for a horrible event that hurts people? Yes. But the bigger picture is that you're protecting people. That's the real thing. I mean, you know, that brings up another issue. You've got officers that are working under some municipalities and some localities that have statistics that they have to meet. And if you look at that list, you're going to see that the it's heavily weighted on financial generating finances for that municipality, which I think is self-defeating for the guys that are on the street, just like me and all the people that I've worked with. It's self-defeating because that doesn't, the stats thing is one thing, helping people is, another thing.
Yeah.
Do they ever line up? It's but they're being run by politicians that want to have a financial increase from their police department as a financial generator, with drug arrests and seizing things and your traffic stuff. I mean, they make money off of that, and that they're your officer on the street. A lot of them, their performance reviews are heavily based on those financially, rewarding to the municipality, those issues. Which
how do we fix it? I mean, everything you're saying is a deep-seated issue. It's like you want to talk about a systemic issue. Here's a systemic issue. How does this stuff get fixed? Number one, how does the perception between communities and police get fixed? How does these issues that you're talking about, you would have to literally change the way departments are run to not have.
Well, I mean, we have to attack this Antifa situation, and believe me, what we were doing during 9/11, a lot of what I did was counterintelligence, to try to identify the threat before it happens and take it out before it happens. We've got to do that. I'm surprised we haven't done that prior to this. Maybe we have, but not to the degree that we need to be. You got to attack that problem before it attacks you. And with Antifa now on the ground here, you've got to infiltrate Antifa, and you've got to take them down. That's going to be one of the ways that you can attack this thing, and you can do it quickly. Clearly, a lot of these guys that are going to be facing, for instance, like that guy that attacked Jack Posobiec at the whatever his name is, that clearly has Antifa ties. Those kind of guys, you work it backwards, but you've really got to get in there and infiltrate that and attack it. Once you take away that violent part of that has infiltrated the peaceful protesters, which is fine. Peaceful protesters, that's awesome.
Be protected, if anything. Yes.
Right. Exactly. I mean, when you're infiltrating a Antifa organization, you are not only are you protecting further out, but you're protecting like right now. And you could take them out of the program, and that's the best way to do it. You have less people at risk. You're minimizing the risk. You're minimizing your exposure. You're minimizing the exposure to your law enforcement people, and you're minimizing the exposure to the peaceful protesters by eliminating those guys.
That's a great point. Yeah, you would need less interactions. The peaceful protesters could be there, do what they're doing safely. They wouldn't be exposed to the violence on that end, which then brings the police and increases the entire tension between the situation.
Right. And I think that the emphasis has to be on infiltrating that.
I think that's important. You're right. I think that would if we could get rid of the violent elements and the more kind of vocally extreme elements within these groups that are inciting violence or whatever they're doing, and infiltrate that aspect of it.
Right. The other, as to address your question, how do you fix the whole thing? A lot of these politicians that acquire positions like mayor and like district attorney that are getting their funding from somebody that has adverse wishes. We've got to cut that out. We have to eliminate their ability to you know, for just as an example, some of these mayors, like the mayor in San Francisco, you know, I think Soros pushed in millions and millions of dollars to win that.
But how do you stop that? I mean, that's just how our political system is built. I mean, would you stop funding of politicians from individuals? I mean, would you cap it? Would you?
Well, you'd have to examine that. You'd have to obviously cap it, because Soros, with unlimited money, can back somebody right out of the race. I mean, a lot of these people that were running against Soros-backed DAs, you know, just dropped out because they didn't have money.
Yeah,
they couldn't compete. And if you limit that and totally examine it, I mean, it just brings the thought. I had a case in New York City where it was relatively close to an election. I can't remember the last one. I think it was the last one, and I had cases. I was working in New York City in Brooklyn, and NYPD would come. They said, "Hey, no sense in you driving around the city. We'll just pick you up and take you where you need to go." Okay, great, fine. So one of the places I had to go was a location where they registered voters, and when I went in there, they had a security guard at almost every one of these places, and when the NYPD cop announced that there was a federal agent there to see somebody, everybody ran out of the building. Everybody ran out of the building. You know, because I think they thought I was there for voter fraud or something, but there was nobody left in that building but that security guard, which is very telling. But I think that's one of the other things. I mean, you just had a New Jersey politician and two other guys charged for mail-in voter fraud.
Oh yeah, there's massive mail-in. The whole thing with mail-in voting is insane to me. And people like to deny that voter fraud is an issue. I'm a strong advocate that no, we should. That's one of our most important things that we should be protecting is secure voting. Because I remember it's very smart, the narratives that come out to kind of fight against this. Voter ID is racist. Asking for an ID to vote is somehow racist. That's how they play with language and how they mess with these things to make it seem like, you know, to create whatever world they need to create in order to get the result they want. That statement in itself, asking for an ID to vote being racist, is such an absurd statement to any objective, rational person, but they manage to get it as a mainstream message out there and people go along with it. They've done that consistently with a lot of things. And that to me is very well done on their part in terms of, you're talking about infiltrating society and being able to create a narrative. That is right. One way to do it. But I look at it and I go, this makes no sense. This makes absolutely no sense. And the end result is obviously...
I just saw a thing where a guy went to vote on Tuesday. There was an election on Tuesday, I think, in New York, and the guy went in and said, "Hey, here's my ID and my voter registration card." "Oh, we don't need that." They said, "Oh, we don't need that."
Yeah.
I mean, what? You know, I mean, oh God. I mean, you know, this brings me back to my point, and you well know this. In a foreign country, if you're voting, that's awesome. I mean, that is one of the sacred rights that we are just, excuse my French, but we're pissing it away. And we better lock that down, because that's one of the things that makes us significantly different from other countries that really look at us and go, wow, that we wanted to be able to vote. Now we're able to vote, and it's sacred to us. It's more sacred to them now than it is to us, which is shocking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we need to protect it. We need to protect and make sure that voting is done properly for both sides. I think it's necessary for everyone.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's
Absolutely.
just how it needs to be. You know, you want to make sure that your democracy is preserved. And that means that people's votes are counted properly and that they count and that there's not some manipulation going on. But yeah, I'm very curious to see what happens in the upcoming election in terms of.
Yeah. You know, it really is sad that you've got, and this is another issue I just wanted to mention. I mean, you have the criminal justice system being manipulated at almost every level. I mean, people are, you know, they're disappointed in their local prosecutors, their state prosecutors. There's been absolutely rampant corruption that's taken place in a lot of these criminal justice systems, particularly state criminal justice systems. And, you know, just it, you know, falls in line with everything everything else that's crumbling. Again, and people have agendas that are not necessarily good.
Yeah.
You know,
Thank you so much for coming on and talking. And we covered a broad range of stuff that I'm uneducated on. So for me, it's great to have this conversation and be able to talk about this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I hope we can infiltrate them, or are doing so right now, because it's got to be done to get the violent element out of this. You know, Antifa gives a peaceful protesters a bad name. You know what I'm saying?
Very much so. They do. Yeah, it's actually they get generalized based on the actions of Antifa in the same way that police may get generalized based on the actions of a few bad police, which is, we got to cut out the violent element. I agree. That's part of it. And then hopefully also change social perception of everything going on right now to stop it.
Well, what you're doing, I've seen a lot of your videos. What you're doing is an awesome step forward. And I think that as you build your audience, you're going to have a significant impact on people that need to hear it. Okay. And they need to know that it's something that needs to be done now. You have to take action now. You can't.
That's what I'm saying. That's the whole speak truth thing. It's get people talking now. Speak up now. Complacency. I've seen it in my own family's history. You sit back and you say things are going to get better. They don't get better. They get worse. They get worse very quickly. We've seen just the past 3 weeks how quickly things have changed. I mean, it's 3 weeks ago, I would have told you where we are today is an impossibility, and we're here today. And that clicked for me. Where I was like, no, things can change very quick. Don't forget.
Right. A perfect example is, law enforcement were heroes 4 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm. During COVID, they were heroes. Yeah.
Right. And now they're not. I mean,
So now they're public enemy number one. They're not only not heroes, now they are the most hated group of people in the country. And I know that for a fact. I mean, I'm going out and I'm talking to people en masse, and they are the number one targeted and hated group in the country right now, which is why I started all this. It had nothing to do with my criticisms of police, because I've actually traditionally been critical of police and wanted
right
changes. And it got to a point where I'm like, no, I have to take a stand on the opposite here, because I have to stand up for what's right. And the outcomes I'm seeing right now are more dangerous. The things I want to see changed in the police force will never happen with what I'm seeing now. And actually the attack on the country as a whole, in terms of what I'm seeing, has to do with this attack on police. So I'm going to say they're the last line of defense.
Yes.
And people are going after them.
Absolutely.
So again, thank you. Yeah, I learned a lot in this conversation. It's interesting you brought up things that I've just been watching articles on. So maybe that's becoming a more mainstream kind of watching videos on. I mean, so maybe that's become a more mainstream, slowly becoming a more mainstream thing. But that's very interesting, everything you brought up. So thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure to help here. I think you're doing an awesome job. Keep it up.
Thanks.